The thing you have spent your entire career trying to hide is about to become your competitive advantage. So let me ask you this. How long have you believed that the way you are wired is a problem that you need to solve? Most of us grew up with the same leadership script. Strong leaders are charismatic, certain, quick, always have the right answers. If you were more reflective, more sensitive, or slower to speak, it was easy to think you were just wired wrong for leadership. What's worse, I spent even more years exhausting myself trying to be someone I wasn't. I was convinced that was the price for admission for real leadership impact. I now know that belief is not just wrong, it's becoming obsolete. The leadership model that we are used to is losing value, and what's replacing it is something that looks a lot like you and me. The old model rewarded performance over presence, volume over value, speak first, move fast, look certain. That style could work when being heard was mostly about volume and speed, but fast answers are not the advantage that they used to be. AI can outpace any of us on rapid response, information retrieval, and quick output. What it can't replicate is the judgment to know which question is worth asking in the first place, and that's exactly where quiet leaders tend to live. Teams today are not struggling because they're lacking fast-thinking, charismatic leaders. They're struggling because they are overwhelmed, anxious, and burning out. They need leaders who can steady the room, not add to the noise. That is a different job description, and it's one that highly sensitive and introverted leaders like us are often exceptionally well equipped for. So, what does quiet leadership actually look like in practice? Well, when I say quiet leadership, I do not mean passive. I mean precise. Quiet leaders don't rush to fill every silence, which means they gather better information. They hear the hesitation in the teammate's voice. They notice the mismatch between what is said and what is meant. They catch the pattern between three meetings that everyone else misses because they were too busy talking over each other. That kind of attention builds trust faster than any kind of keynote style charisma ever could. People tell the truth when they don't feel steamrolled. Real clarity comes from having the full picture, not just from the person that speaks first or speaks the loudest. And here's what's going to matter in the years ahead. AI can draft, sort, summarize, and scale. It cannot replace wise judgment, relational trust, the ability to sense what's happening underneath the conversation. That's where quiet leaders tend to shine the brightest. If you're an introverted or highly sensitive leader, you looked at the old model of leadership and probably concluded one of two things. Either leadership isn't for people like you, or you need to perform that model of leadership until it stops feeling fake. And so you spend enormous amounts of time trying to fit into a leadership mold that was never made for you. Somewhere along the line, in school, in your career, in leadership development programs that were never designed for you, you got the message that your preference for time to process, for deeper connections with fewer people, for more time to recharge between meetings, that those things were liabilities, that they needed to be fixed, that you needed to be fixed, that you needed to be louder, faster, more certain, more visible. That is simply not true. Not only are those things not liabilities, when they are properly supported, they become your leadership superpowers. And in today's world of AI overwhelm, they are the most highly sought after leadership competencies. So let's talk about that. What does a team actually need from a leader these days? They do not need somebody who performs certainty that they don't actually have. They need someone who asks the right questions instead of giving a random answer just for the sake of speaking. Think about what happens when a leader brings that frenetic, chaotic energy to a room that is already stressed out. That tension multiplies. People get tighter. Instead of solving problems, people start protecting themselves. They shut down. Now think about what happens when a calm, discerning leader walks into that same room. The pace slows down just enough for people to be able to think. Someone asks a question that cuts through the noise. A team member who is about to shut down instead speaks up because they sense that it's safe to. The whole dynamic shifts. Not because someone was the loudest and the most certain, but because someone was the calmest and the steadiest. This is not a soft skill. This is a strategic advantage. And it is one that highly sensitive, introverted leaders are typically extraordinarily good at, usually without even trying. I want you to actually see what this looks like in practice. Because you you don't rush to fill the silence, you often gather better information than leaders who do. You hear the hesitation in someone's voice. You catch the mismatch between what's being said and what's being felt. You notice that a team member has gone quiet, and not because they have nothing to say, but because something happened to make them feel unsafe to say it. Wise judgment, relational trust, the ability to steady people during uncertainty, those things are not going anywhere. If anything, that's becoming more rare and more valuable as everything else gets automated. That is wiring that you have spent years trying to hide or apologizing for, and that is exactly what the next decade of leadership desperately needs. Now, I want to be honest with you because I think you deserve that more than just a highlight reel and all the good news. Knowing that your style is needed more now than ever, it doesn't stop your body from tensing up before the difficult conversation or the high stakes presentation. Awareness is just the starting point. It's not the solution. And this is exactly where most leadership development programs unfortunately leave quiet leaders stranded. It tells you what's possible, but it doesn't give you the specific customized steps to actually get you there. Because the truth is, your challenges are not generic. The stories that you've been telling yourself about what leadership has to look like and what you're capable of, those stories are specific to you. And the skills gap between your internal strengths and your external visibility, that one is unique to you too. Generic leadership advice is never going to close a gap this specific. This is why my entire approach is built around 3 specific steps that have to happen in the right order. The first layer is regulate. Before anything else, your nervous system has to be settled enough for your best thinking to actually be accessible. You can be the most perceptive person in the room and still not be heard if your body is running a stress response that's pulling you offline. Regulation isn't the soft part of leadership development, it's the foundation. Without it, everything else that you're trying to build is going to crumble. The second layer is reframe. Once the nervous system is strong and steady, we look at the stories. Those are the stories that you have been carrying for so long that they feel like facts. Stories like the belief that speaking up feels too risky, that your careful, considered style reads as uncertain, that the leaders getting promoted are actually getting promoted for the right reasons, and that you're just not measuring up. Some of those stories have been running since your first leadership role, maybe even before your first leadership role. They need to be examined, challenged, and replaced with something more accurate and more useful, not through positive thinking, but through real, deliberate mindset work. And then, only then do we get to rise, which is the skill set layer. That is how to translate your empathetic insights into skills and behaviors that are impossible to ignore. Things like how to run a meeting that move things forward without being the loudest voice in the room. How to build influence that compounds quietly so that your name comes up in rooms that you're not even in. That sequence, regulate, reframe, rise, is the difference between knowing that you have something valuable to offer and actually being recognized and rewarded for it. You do not need to become a different kind of leader. You need support that was actually built for the kind of leader that you already are. Support that works with your nervous system, your strengths, and your specific version of this challenge. Not a program that hands you a generic playbook and wishes you luck. That is the gap that I help people close every single day, and it is closer than you think. I want to leave you with this. The goal is not to change who you are. It's to become a more equipped version of the leader you already are. There's a difference between having a right support problem and having a skills problem, and most of the quiet leaders I work with just have a right support problem, meaning they don't have the right support. It's not that they don't have the right skills. They just don't have the right support to enhance those skills, to bring out those skills, or to obtain those skills in a way that they can actually then deliver on them. You are not too little because you think before you speak. The model that told you those things were flaws is quickly becoming obsolete, and what's coming is exactly what you have been carrying all along. If this video resonated and you'd like to go deeper, I would love for you to grab my free guide. It's called Lead Powerfully Without Pretending. It's a 10-minute daily reset designed specifically for how your brain and nervous system actually work. The link is in the description. And if you are further along than what a free guide is going to provide, please go to amberandersoncoaching.com. You can sign up for a free masterclass there, and we can spend an hour together diving into this work. You can also learn more about the Alchemist Leader Lab there and learn how we can work together more closely. And remember, Alchemist leaders don't just adapt to challenges, they transform them. So take a minute, pause today, and ask yourself, what is the alchemy opportunity here? What does this make possible? Keep turning your unique perspective into leadership gold. I will see you in next week's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all those good YouTube things. I'll see you next week.